Welcome to the Road to the Trials podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Matt Chittim, and today on the show, we have Jeff Cunningham. Jeff is one of the best coaches in America, coaches a number of high-level athletes who are either training to go to the trials for the first time or have gone to the trials in the past, and we talk about that process, that multi-year, step-by-step process that Jeff is so engaged with, and also something that he talks a lot about in this episode, and that for me was particularly interesting. Before we get into it, I want to give a shout-out to our sponsor, V.O2. You'll hear more about them later, but as a coach and as an athlete, I have trusted them for years, and I know you can do so as well. So let's get into our conversation with Jeff Cunningham.
Welcome back to Road to the Trials. I am here with Matt Chittim, and we have the fortune of being here to break down all things about the two and a half year journey ahead with Coach Jeff Cunningham. Jeff, so glad to have you back.
Ben, I'm excited, and we were off of the OTQ chase train for only basically a few months, really, and we are back on it. And as much as I came on y'all's podcast right either prior to or right after the trial saying, man, I'm so relieved that we're back to not having to, man, I was a liar. I'm loving it. We're back in it, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, this is going to launch on September 1st, which, is Labor Day to most people, but to all marathoners in America, it is the opening of the trials window, culminating, I believe the date is March 2028. So, I just love, we're doing this because we love it. We're doing it because we find ourselves, as marathon geeks going, we sort of talk about this one race off in the distance for years, and we don't even allow ourselves to get excited. So what if we just filled that window with as much excitement as possible? And so that's what Matt and Lindsay and I are trying to do. And part of that is speaking to people like yourself who, I would go so far as to say are more excited about the window than we are, the hosts of this podcast, which I'm super excited by. When you think about September 1st, 2025, and then let's say February, March 28, how do you even begin to contain your excitement and break it down? How do you not burn yourself out there, Jeff?
Being invested in other people's dreams. And you could never get burned out on being invested in other people's dreams because you have people who were reliant on you. I get an incredible amount of satisfaction by living vicariously through other people, not gonna lie. And so when you have that level of emotional commitment and passion and investment, you don't get burned out on it. You can't.
Absolutely. How are you, how is the Bat City Track Club, of which you're the head coach, sort of marking this? I'm curious from your perspective, is it like you just let September 1st pass and you just be like, I'm cool. I'm not even going to be overly hyped about it. Or are you like, I could imagine you outside your athlete's window with a bullhorn, like, here we go.
Yeah.
Where are you on that spectrum?
Yeah. I'm going to kind of let September the 1st pass because we don't have a race on September 1st or 2nd, right? But obviously, Berlin is going to be a big day for a lot of people. I think there are probably going to be several, if not a lot of Americans possibly chasing, that qualifier in what realistically, for all intents and purposes, is sort of like opening day in baseball, right? Listen, the first 20 days of September are going to pass without anything particularly interesting going on. There might be a few sanctioned races in there somewhere, but realistically, Berlin is sort of where it's going to be. But I think we look at Twin Cities and then we look at Chicago. That's where we're really kicking things off. Don't sleep on Twin Cities, guys. You go get a good weather day. It's a good course. And, you can have some people slide in there and sort of steal the thunder of our October 12ers. And we know what's happening October 12th, don't we? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is that this is going to be the fun part about this whole journey, is that these races that maybe go under the wire or, just a little bit underserved from the kind of the mass, I don't even know how to say it exactly. The people who love following the marathon journey of elites don't know all of the smaller races that are equally as fast as some of the faster races, but maybe just don't have some of the pros lining up to them. But if you're going for an OTQ time, you could be really well served, being part of those.
Yeah, and I would lament if any race director, any closely tied to any race that I forget to mention here, is going, "What about our race?" But the reality of it is we have what I would refer to as the big fall lineup. Okay, and the big fall lineup, of course, is Chicago, New York, CIM.
You're going to sleep on I have seen you out on the streets of Indianapolis screaming your lungs out.
But see, what happened there is you interrupted me at a comma, not a period.
Oh,
okay.
No. I should know better.
No, but Pete, but then perception wise, you have the fall lineup that is exhilarating and exciting, and courses that are fast, and that fall lineup that I think is sort of underestimated and is underreported on is Twin Cities, Indianapolis, right? Um, and those two races can provide a ton of excitement, right? Now there's other races that I really, really love, and I'm begging and I'm pleading them, please get your races sanctioned. That way we can get fired up about Columbus and Des Moines. Those are great races, but we got to get sanctioned, guys. Come on. I'll even chip in just a little bit. It's only a little bit per head, and they do it by, I think, cohorts of like 500 runners, and it ain't really that expensive to get done. Come on. We got to provide opportunities for a lot of really, really talented runners, especially in the Midwest, maybe in the Southeast, who don't have big travel budgets or might have trouble getting bottles, right? I mean, New York, Chicago, that's a tough deal. CIM is really leaning into it this year. They're the U.S. Championship, and they are being really, really welcoming to the Americans who are chasing that standard. But man, there are some fast courses, a lot of them in the Midwest and the Northern Midwest, that could really, really have their star rise, man, if we would just go get those races sanctioned, man. I'm just such a fan of the sport. I mean, it's literally better than Christmas. It's better than Christmas. It is literally like 15 weeks of Christmas. And then we get to Houston. And frankly, Houston is still part of the fall slate. So actually, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw Houston in there. We've got New York, we have Chicago, we have CIM, and we have Houston. I mean, let's be honest. Houston's not a spring race. That's the end of the fall, especially in Texas, because we might have had like one day under 60 degrees before Houston anyway. So, okay, I'm exaggerating, but we're suffering a little bit in it down here. Right?
Call us Santa Claus. We're trying to. Yeah. We're selling Christmas here. This is good stuff.
Hey, it's much gray as Matt's getting in that beard. He could go down to the mall and pose.
That's it. No more video podcast. We're going straight to audio. No more video. I'll say this, Jeff. You mentioned the bottle service at these races, which the pros have been getting for a long time. It's so valuable, especially now with the whole carb evolution/revolution that we're seeing. It's obviously a huge advantage if you can be in a group and in a race that allows you to get that bottle service. But obviously, it's a hard thing for races to manage. That's for sure, between the men's and women's races. So when you see races like the Marathon Project, like the McCurdy marathons that he's been doing for a couple of years now, that potentially offer bottle service to people who don't normally get it or who can't get it at races where they're running with their peers, how does that factor into your potential recommendations for some of your runners who are going to be borderline OTQ eligible?
It is the deciding factor, and I actually apologize. You're right. I actually have 2 women chasing the Olympic trial standard at the Marathon Project. I apologize. Yeah, that's late December.
It's a new one.
Is it December 20th, guys? I think something 20th, like that.
Yeah,
right.
19th and 20th. Yes, there's 2 different races. Yeah,
2 really, really unique races, and I am plugging these races right now because I'm a fan of the sport. That's Marathon Project, December 20th, and then McCurdy Marathon is going to be March the 29th. And you run on that tangent line. I stood there and I watched it, and I think that Matt, you and Peter were literally maybe the first 2 phone calls I made after I just had the absolute joy of watching, one of my guys run 2:09 on James's course there, in Rockland State Park, outside of White Plains, New York, and it's coming back in March. Listen, don't get it twisted. I love Boston Marathon. I didn't know how much I loved the Boston Marathon until I went to the Boston Marathon. And then it was one of those aha moments where I was like, okay, I get it. I mean, Peter's obsession with the race, a little psychotic, a little unsettling. Well, I understand it a bit more now, right? But
I feel seen.
James's race is typically about 3 weeks, I think, before, right? Boston. And then you have a gem of a little one out there out west, in the Northwest. The Eugene Marathon, which is just sort of a bit of a favorite for me. I have the same relationship with the Eugene Marathon I kind of have with Indianapolis. I think we all sort of get our little sort of affinity for races, and a lot of it is based on personal experience. If your runners had great days there, then I think you sort of become enamored with the race. But there's tons of gems out there, tons of gems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's been so fun to see Eugene just continue to build the lore around that event, because I mean, it's close to my hometown. I love going to Eugene. I go there all the time, but to see the awe in the athletes' eyes and sort of just that, bubbling excitement for being there, for what the day could hold, that to me is what has to drive an athlete's decision, right? Like I always say to the people I coach, like, we got a lot of good options. We could discuss them all, but you're going to have to lead a little bit with what you're really excited to lean into. And so it's been fun to see that be Eugene for many number of athletes. I'm curious, Jeff, I don't know if I know we've talked about this on a phone call. Where were you and what were your thoughts when they announced men have to break 2:16, women still have to break 2:37?
Complete and utter lack of surprise. That's exactly where I knew it was going to land. For selfish reasons, just because, I want more of my athletes to get in. The 2:16 makes it more challenging, obviously, for the men because we dropped it, right? But the reality of it is this. It's very, very doable. And what I learned, and I checked myself, what I learned after 2020 was before you light yourself on fire and go screaming in the streets, believe in your athletes. If your athletes see you go negative, if your athletes see you start sort of lamenting the standards, then they are then going to take on your anxiety. They're going to take on your self-doubt. And you have just literally done an awful job as a coach. That is literally that is uncoaching. Is uncoaching a word? That's uncoaching. It's one of these things where, you go into halftime in a locker room in a basketball game and you're down 18 and you tell the guys you got no chance. Well, damn it, they probably are going to believe they got no chance. So what happened with the women, right? They dropped it 8 minutes, okay? And everybody was screaming. And I remember where I was. I was in the drive-thru at a Taco Cabana in Waco, Texas, when I found out it was 2:37, okay? And I thought to myself, woe is me. Woe are my runners. We're going to have to go and see if they'll take qualifying times on a Rebel downhill course, blah, 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 blah. And then guess what happened? They train like monsters. They proved that they're tougher than raw meat and nails. And we showed up with a robust field of women in Orlando, right? And it was fine. We were fine. The man, we can run 2:16. I told the dudes this. I says, all we're doing is going from needing to run 5:13 pace down to about 5:09 to 5:10 pace. Okay. 3 or 4 seconds a mile is,
just run a little faster. Sounds easy to me.
Listen. I got you 2 things. Eat a pot of beans the night before the race and cut your tangents, and you'll get your 3 minutes, guys. I promise.
There we go.
You'll be fine. No, in all seriousness, I'm like, guys, let's stop acting like this is some massive shift. They're not asking you to go out and run 20 seconds a mile faster. We're talking about 3 or 4 seconds. And I'm like, do you have, like I asked the guy, I said, do you have 0.7 of a second per 400 meters in you? Well, that's hardly anything. I'm like, that's what we're doing. Calm down. We're going to be okay.
How do you think about, we're sort of, Matt and I are hoping to jump around, and you coach many athletes of many different experience levels, ages. So we kind of want to hear it from a bunch of different perspectives. One I'm curious about is, if you have an OTQ hopeful and they already signed up for a race, they're training for a race right now. How do you talk about that goal in relation to this race, given that they still have technically 2 years to give it a shot. So I know it varies by athlete, but how are you generally talking about it now versus I know when we speak again, I hope in 2 falls, it'll just be crunch time and it'll just be like, get on the train and make whatever you can out of it. But right now is an interesting time where athletes could choose to sort of, enter the warm water at their own rate. How are you thinking about it?
I have identified probably, I would say, anywhere from 16 to 2 dozen people I coach nationally who have a chance to run 237 flat or 216 flat by December 2027. We're guessing, right? The December 2027 is going to be the cutoff. Typically, CIM weekend is where they cut it off, typically. So what I've done is I've had individual conversations with each of them about where they sit, right? I've got one lady who's 45 years old and missed qualifying for the trials by 13 seconds in 2023 at CIM, right? And then I've got another young lady who is fresh out of college who ran one marathon for fun and ran 244 in her debut as a 23-year-old, right? Those are two very, very different people. When you look at the hands of time, you look at the clock hands that are moving, you look at who's already been there and who hasn't been there yet, but who can. I've got a couple of guys, right, who famously, one of them famously snuck in under the gun by 1 second. CIM 2023 was literally the last male in the United States to qualify for the trials, right? And they just moved the goalposts on him, right? By a minute and 59 seconds. So how do we actually technically a minute 44 because his chip time was 2:17:44. So we do have the luxury of using chips across the board now. That's a good thing, right? I think it's a very fair thing. So you have to have individual conversations with each of them. Obviously, with one of my men that runs 209, qualifying for the trials should be something that should happen pretty quickly, right? Hopefully October the 12th. He's racing Chicago, right? We get that done. So you just have to take your runners. You have to look at their age, their injury history, current fitness, and whether or not we say, okay, we're going to do it this fall, or we might do it, we don't really care, or hey, how about we just go get a PR and chip away at this? Because technically, I guess right now we've got 28 months, right? Until they shut qualifying down, 27 and a half months, right? That's a long way to go. And so I tell somebody if they're at 244 on the women's side or 222 on the men's side, it's like, let's run 239 to 242 this fall. On the men's side, it's like, hey, let's break 220 for the first time. And then when you're within 120 or 180 seconds of qualifying for the Olympic trials, then we could just break it down and go, okay, now we've got it down to chewable pieces. It's like when you show up to one of those bad, like buffet restaurants, right? And they got 14 entrees. Don't try to eat all the entrees at once. We're going to eat them one at a time. Okay. We come back to this restaurant a bunch of times in the next 28 months. We're going to eat it one entree at a time until we finally get to the dessert tray.
Oh, I love this. Yeah. I think of all you marathoners out there. You got 2 years of marathon meals to go. So take your time. Someone might be dreaming of the OTQ, but they're a little bit newer and they've run, a really, I think what I'm blown away by is like, you could be a woman who's run 248. Like you are just flying.
That's fast.
That's fast. Like if you see a woman who can run 248 going down the street, I mean, I'm always like, who is that person? I should know that person.
She probably wins most of the marathons she enters.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so then how do you, are there sort of like races you would go to, ways you might train, or like things you would be thinking, what would the priorities be to break down the coming 2 years?
Had that conversation today with somebody. Okay. And I'm not naming names, but this person only has a 251 PR. But my gosh, the talent and what was done to run the 251 was so hilariously woeful. I wouldn't have given when I was coaching at the high school, I wouldn't have had one of my JV girls train for the 3200 the way this young lady trained. And then today, okay, I'm going to bore people with the details of a workout. He goes out and runs 10 by 1,000 meter at altitude on 1 minute recovery and averaged 328. And I thought, and I texted her, I said, that's not the workout of a 251 marathoner. And now we're running 6 days a week instead of 4. Now the shortest days are 11 miles. And you can start seeing the ruminations of like, okay, so how do you talk to a runner like this? What you say is, we're going to run Berlin. She is running Berlin. Let's run, I don't know, 245. Let's just go run 245, right? Why? Because Berlin will allow you to petition the race to get bottles. So the proletariat can get access to bottles at Berlin. You simply ask for it, okay? And I've had people go from 256 to 246 on that course by simply training hard over the summer, getting bottles, and having carbs and sodium every step of the way. So I'm sitting here like, okay, 245. Then put in another great block, come back and run on James McCurdy's tangent line, run 239.45, 242.06, something like that. Then all of a sudden, it's kind of like when you're up the street and you're close to the barbecue or the family reunion because you can smell the smoke from the sausage and the chicken, right? It's like all of a sudden you can smell that 237 and you're there. 251, no way. But if you could by March of 2000, let's say 26, be at 241.47, all of a sudden it's like, okay, all right. And I still haven't run a 90-mile week in my life, and I'm healthy, and my coach is making me get my blood work, and I'm sleeping well, and I'm doing the things, and then that's how you have these conversations. Listen, man. And I've talked about it a lot. We spend so much time, talking about can't instead of can, and confusing realism and pessimism. What's the harm? So you end up coming up quote unquote short and run 238.07 or 237.40. Are you a failure? Are you going to lament the process? Are you going to lament the journey that you woke up at the age of 28 as a 238 marathoner? With actually your best aerobic years ahead of you, and the 2032 games are coming, and you damn near did it, right? So there's nobility in the journey, there's joy in the journey, but you talk to the people who you think have the ruminations of being able to get there by watching the progress, watching the talent sort of come to the fore, and then you can start kind of having these conversations with them saying, hey, this is worth dreaming about. And let's face it, there's two things that young men and young women have to chase after they've qualified for the Boston Marathon if they really, really, really want to lean harder into their marathoning career. There's a couple of things that I like to talk about. There's other goals that are completely noble. One, making your first elite field in a mid-major marathon, then making your first pro field in a major marathon, Boston, Chicago, Houston, New York, and I'll throw CIM too. I'll throw them in there, right? So you make those fields. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, that's rad, that's awesome, right? And then for Americans, it's qualify for the Olympic trials, right? That is the emerging elite runners BQ. I would argue, don't mean to offend people, that it's still harder, right, to hit that OTQ. That's tough. You got to run 5:59 a mile to qualify on the women's side. You got to run 5:10 on the men's side.
Oof. Yeah, and that's what we love to see. I think part of the reason Matt and Lindsay and I will wax poetic on another podcast all about why we love the race, but giving some of America's best runners something to dream about, something to pour themselves into, that's absolutely what drives this conversation.
Guys, it's about barriers to entry and competitive opportunities. You have a low barrier to entry and you have numerous competitive opportunities as a marathoner. Okay. There is no 5K, 10K, half marathon on the roads in the Olympic Games. Okay. There is no cross country in the Olympic Games. One would argue it should be. So the problem is to even qualify for the Olympic trials in track and field, it requires such elite talent, and there are so few competitive opportunities to get it done. I mean, you don't get to go online and register for the Prefontaine Invitational or register for the A heat at Mount Sac in the 10,000 if you're a woman and your PR is 3507. Okay. I have women who've qualified for the Olympic trials, however, who have 35-minute and 34-minute 10K PRs. Okay. So the point is there's a low barrier to entry. You go pay your $150, you go pay your $200, right? You're in the race. And now on the men's side, you have a chip on the back of your bib. I mean, theoretically,
Got a shot.
you could run that out of the damn bee corral weaving between 8-minute milers. You go and you run 2:15:59. You're in the Olympic trials, guys.
Matt, you're welcome to jump in here, but I'm curious. What came to mind for me was I was thinking about right above me, Running with the Buffaloes, Mark Wetmore, and there's a line in there where the author Chris Lear references that an athlete came to Mark saying, "I want to be on the team," and Mark says, "Cool, go run 100 miles a week for a year. Come back and we'll talk." It's a very blunt. It's not particularly inspiring, but it speaks to the cold hard truth of some athletes maybe need to take time. There's both focusing on racing, and then there's also focusing on how am I going to level up all these other elements of my training. So I'm curious for a lot of the athletes who just say, like, Jeff, I do anything to get better at the marathon. What are some of the things that, I know we know these things, but for athletes that are already fast, what are the things that are often lacking that you point people to improve upon?
Run more.
Mm-hmm.
People will go, well, I ran 2:17 on 75 miles a week. And I'm like, well, yeah, did you have any major injuries along the way? Well, no. Um, do you have any, moral objections to running on Sundays? No. Do you have a patient spouse or significant other in your life that's willing to put up with this? Yes. Okay, well, you got to run more. Listen, I will say this repeatedly, and I understand that every once in a while you'll have somebody who will allege that they, ran 22 or 2:23 in a marathon on 65 miles a week. Maybe. That's unlikely. Do not ever plan on being a statistical outlier. That's what I tell everybody. A guy whose retirement plan is buying lottery tickets has no plan. Okay? Do not try to be the genetic lottery winner and think that you're going to go and be a borderline world-class marathoner on 70 to 80 miles a week. It's really, really difficult. And if you're a talent anomaly, if you're an outlier, that's fine. But anybody who has been to even a junior college like Baylor University where I went and had to take statistics, right? You understand what a statistical outlier is. That means you are not like the rest. One, I tell everybody, assume that your talent level falls on the fat part of the bell curve until something happens that empirically tells you that you are not on the fat part of the bell curve. Now, everybody who's in position to qualify for the Olympic trials is automatically not on the fat part of the bell curve of runners. But I'm saying take everybody who runs between, on the women's side, 2:18 and 3 hours in the United States, and every man that runs between 2:06 and 2:25 or 2:30 in the US. Take that subset of people and then do your own bell curve there. Assume you're on the fat part of the bell curve. What does being on the fat part of the bell curve mean? It means you have to do the things that people who are like you do to achieve what you want to achieve or do what those other people have done. And that means you might need to run 100 miles a week and come back to me in a year. Right? Mark was right. Fortunately, sometimes it's like go run 80 or 100 miles a week for a year, come back to me, and if you can run 24, 30 for 8K, you might have a chance, right?
Hmm.
So train like a marathoner. What I don't like is when people say, I don't care what anybody else is doing. If I just worry about me, I'm going to be okay. It's usually sort of like a high school football coach ism.
Mm.
But I mean, if everybody else is running a shotgun spread and you're still running the wishbone, maybe you ought to think about what you're doing, coach, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, train like you're on the fat part of the bell curve. Train like an elite runner. Here's the trouble when you're working 80, 40 hours a week. I actually have some people that work 80 hours a week. All of a sudden, we do have to start looking at, all right, well, maybe 80 miles a week is all you can do. I have one very talented young guy who I'm super excited about. He's debuting at, of course, Indianapolis, right? Because his
Hmm.
collegiate ERs got him into the elite race. We're going to get bottles. This guy just took a job in the tech industry, and we're having to be super, super careful. We're doing it on singles. We're
Mm.
running 12 miles a day, right? In singles and hitting 20 miles on the long run. Poor guy has to meet me at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning at the track to knock out, 12 times a K in 80-degree heat at 6 a.m. Yes, welcome to Texas. And we're gonna have to knock him out in, I don't know, 2:55 to 3 flat on a minute, maybe 90 seconds recovery, and he's got to go to work. There are no
Yeah.
doubles, right? But as close as we can get to staying on the fat part of the bell curve mileage wise, we have a puncher's chance. Um,
Hmm.
Understanding that, I mean, obviously drinking 10 gallons of reindeer milk and sprinkling pixie dust on our head isn't going to get it done. So we have to be like, all right, what can we do within our bandwidth? Um, Understand our caloric needs. Unfortunately, I think a lot of runners are notoriously underfueled, not just
Hmm.
intra run, but inter run. In other words, between your runs, you're underfueled, not just during your runs. Got to focus on that. If you don't know, ask. How much sodium do I need? How many grams of carbohydrate do I need? What's the difference between having a race that starts at 65 degrees Fahrenheit and 45 degrees Fahrenheit on me physiologically? It's super available, but I think there's so many people who have so much going on. It's like, they don't have the bandwidth, and I completely understand it because I'm old. I don't sleep, and it's not a badge of honor that I should wear with any joy. Um, know about your carbohydrates, know about your sodium, know what everybody else is doing mileage wise. Understand who is coaching you, understand whether or not they truly understand how to put this together. I don't pretend to be the grand poobah of running. I have a lot to learn from a lot of coaches out there, but I've figured a few things out, and there's other coaches that are doing it far better than me. Um, I mean, understand that if your longest tempo run is 5 miles, you might not be ready to run 2:14, right? Understand that if you never do more than 6 kilometers of track work, you might not be ready to hit the trial standard. Just understand the waters that you're wading into. Make sure you don't step off a shelf without waders on your arms, or you could have a problem. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Jeff,
Yeah.
I love this. And you talked earlier about how a coach's role is kind of like not to uncoach or decoach their athletes from a, you know, motivational, inspirational perspective, that they need to have confidence, they need to believe in themselves. And you also talked about like that step-by-step approach from a race day, right? Of like, all right, like it's kind of like an NBA team, like you get to the first round of the playoffs and you get to the second round of the playoffs, and then you're potentially getting to the conference finals, and you don't see many teams skip steps. With that said, this isn't a team sport. So there's going to be plenty of runners out there who are listening to this, or who may talk to you, or maybe they're, a different coach or whatever, who may say, "Hey, I'm doing XYZ workouts that other people are doing. I think that they're my comparison. They're going for the trial standard. I don't care if my time is 15, 17 minutes away. I'm ready." How do you talk to athletes who fall into that boat in a way that can be constructive to them, but also doesn't dampen their spirit, because they might not be doing that kind of step by step race day process that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah. Be super, super enthusiastic. Be positive. Don't squelch the dreams. But then what you do is you sort of explain what the blueprint is, but you come at it from the standpoint of the excitement that they get to finally train like the boss they want to be. like the rock star that they want to be. And if you want to be a rock star, let's do rock star things, right? The glee and the joy. And I know this would sound really, really weird to your average couch potato, but when I moved some of my runners who are progressing so well to running doubles about 3 weeks ago, it was actually almost like a badge of honor. There was excitement in it because it's like, ooh, I get to train like a big boy now, right? I get, well, somebody texts me and says, you gave me big girl training this week. And I says, yeah, you're ready. We went from running 10 miles in singles to doing some 9-3 doubles. I dropped that run down maybe about 9, sometimes even 8 miles, but then we might go to a 4. And so instead of doing 10 miles in a day, now you're doing 12 on your quote unquote easy days, right? All of a sudden that generates excitement. It doesn't generate despair. It doesn't generate frustration. It's like, you're ready. You are ready. You go out there and you have the knight, kneel down in front of you and you take the sword and go on each shoulder and the top of their head. All of a sudden, like, you are now running doubles. And it's like, okay, coach believes I can train like I'm elite. That means that what he told me about me being elite, he's helping me do it. And then sometimes if they don't have teammates to train with, you know what? Listen, I'm cognizant of the fact that sometimes maybe their husband or their wife or their boyfriend or their best friend and coach, that might be their team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then their neighborhood physical therapist who gets fired up about the journey. It says, bro, hit me up. I'll sneak in. I'll meet you down there at 7:00 at night after you get off work to work on a crackly Achilles. And then so you can build a team around you, even if it's not necessarily people running with you. People who are your scaffolding, who you can text, like me. Somebody was really confused about why I responded to the text message at 4:30 this morning, and I was like, "Well, it was somebody in the UK," and I said, "An insomniac," so I woke up. So you can build team, even if it's not a running team. You can have a team of people around you who are like, "Bro, you're running doubles. That's sick," and then suddenly it's like, "Yeah," and then I just ran a 6-minute PR. I just ran a 2:18:40 in the marathon. Now I'm getting closer. Now
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting closer. So it builds momentum. That's how I do it.
All right, I want to take a quick break to talk about our sponsor for today's episode, V.O2. Unlock your potential with V.O2, the cutting edge coaching app built on the proven science of legendary exercise physiologist Dr. Jack Daniels. With the built in paces, coaches and athletes can rely on V.O to train more accurately, improve their performance, and significantly reduce injuries. That's been the case for me as an athlete and a coach for years. Team coaches, private coaches, and large organizations have all used this app successfully over the years. It's based on science and is proven out by athletes over and over and over again. And you get the individualized training interdependency within the app. Learn more at v.o2.com today. You can also download the app in the app stores. You can check the links in our show notes. And if you use code roadtothetrials, all spelled out, you can save 20% as well. So let's get back to our conversation. I did have one more question for that. And I think it relates to this topic in a way, but not necessarily, a complete, circle on top of circle Venn diagram is, the idea like this is a major goal for people. And for some people, they'll view this goal as both their long-term and short-term goal, which potentially makes them squeeze things just a little too hard, right? If like their idea is I want to OTQ this fall for a race in 2 years. And like, it's just the hub of everything. Again, I'm kind of being hypocritical here because like we're doing this podcast the whole time, but it's like, I can imagine that for some people, it would be hard to maintain that level of pressure onto their goals in a way that could ultimately be counterproductive, even if it works well in the short term.
You can't just have physical periodization. Coach has to inject emotional periodization as well. Okay. You cannot be at that heightened state. You are going to induce massive neurologic fatigue that is then going to end up translating into neuromuscular fatigue. You have two kinds of neuromuscular fatigue. You have central and you have peripheral, right? And training at a high level and jumping from one race to the next and chasing and chasing and chasing it all the whole time is a cautionary warning that I will provide to everybody. Now, how do we talk about it in this context? I talk about two things a lot. One, there's a difference between being all in and all consumed. All consumed means that chasing this goal takes over who you are. It becomes your persona. Okay. It actually, you identify as OTQ chaser. Okay. That's negative. It's going to become detrimental. You're at risk for overtraining, anxiety, situational depression. If things are not going as well as you want, you have to be careful. Now, being all in means having healthy imbalance in your life. Now, notice I said healthy imbalance. I really, really don't like cliche. And anybody who's trying to do something as audacious and elite as that, or trying to, you know, be a starter at a Division 1 college football program, or trying to become the world's greatest potholder knitter, you better have healthy imbalance, or you're never going to achieve greatness. So you're going to have some imbalance. You're going to have more focus on running than you are organizing the cardboard boxes for trash pickup on Monday morning. I mean, come on, there is no balance. I mean, it's just a silly thing that we say, that we love to just say. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say we just love just saying some bullshit sometimes. Okay, guys. So
Yeah.
have healthy imbalance where you don't become so consumed with it. By becoming OTQ chaser is who you are. I am Kimmy Smith, who has a great relationship with my wife, or my husband, and my best friends, and I love my dog. But boy, I love running. And when I'm out there for that hour and a half a day, I'm focused, I'm prepared. I'm not, drinking an extra glass of wine at night. I'm going to bed an extra 30 minutes early. That's being all in, and that's okay. Also, the next thing, do not fall prey to the success fail dichotomy. And I lamented that with you guys about why I was actually happy when the OTQ chase was over last time, which was we had gotten to this bizarro place where I had two women run 240, I think 16 and 240:37 at CIM 2023, right? We were in this world where suddenly they were told that they're not elite or not good enough by some of the snobs out there because you didn't run 236, right? And so don't fall prey to the success fail dichotomy. Just because you don't go and get the Olympic trial standard this fall or this winter or even next year, are you progressing in the sport? Are you accomplishing things that you never thought you could accomplish? Did you discover things about your soul and your psyche and your tenacity and your passion for life that maybe you didn't know about? You're progressing. You have succeeded. You did not hit the quote unquote arbitrary goal. All the way up to the day they closed the qualifying, it's still arbitrary. I mean, what is 237 really? It's not the Olympic standard. You run 236, you've got no hope of running on the Olympic team, even if everybody falls over vomiting with explosive diarrhea and you get third in 236.50 at the Olympic trials. I've got news for you. You will not be running in the Olympic Games.
You're still not going, yeah.
So it's arbitrary. So don't let it define you. But if I have a woman who goes from running 250 to 242, right, this fall, that's a success. If I have a guy who has a 2:17:06 PR, I have one of those. He's racing Chicago, and he runs 2:16:12. Have we really failed because we missed the trial standard by 12 seconds? No. So don't go, I fail, and then go and lay in your bed and weep in Chicago because you didn't do it. No, dude, we're going to go shut down a brewery because that was freaking great. We're going to party. You just been 2:16:12. I mean, that's fantastic, right? So don't fall prey to the success fail dichotomy where you fail to sprain your elbow, patting yourself on the back for a job well done. We just don't pat ourselves on the back enough. We don't. And I just really want everybody to be so proud of themselves and go at this with vigor and tenacity. But let's not fall prey to the success fail dichotomy where we fail to see the gains that we've made.
Yeah, to that end, I'm curious about pacing strategy. And do you have to? I can imagine talking some athletes, having the conversation of saying like, on the final day, CIM 27, go big or go home. You always see this, a huge pack where people are peeling off 6 miles in. People are, stopping and walking 8 miles in because they've just decided to say, I'm going to see how long I can hang with that pack. But we've also seen as coaches, the athletes who are willing to, mentally get to a place where they are able to go out conservatively and accelerate. The truism old as time is when you PR, you always think you could have gone a little faster. You always think,
Always.
always could have gone a little faster. But I think there's a real benefit in athletes if they can convince themselves, running with a pack, practicing the fluids, practicing the gels, practicing the pacing, but not just go big or go home for 2 years straight. So I'm curious how you I know we've already touched on this, maybe like incremental goals, but are there packs at these races that are you looking at the time curve and saying like maybe women are trying to pack up around 240 because that's a big milestone, or men are around 220. My hope is that there will be decent numbers, trying to go out at that, 520 pace, for instance. But my fear is that 4 minutes is still quite a bit, but that we lose some of that ability to practice the skills necessary just because it becomes go out over your head and blow up. How would you talk to athlete about that?
The go big or go home mentality needs to be reserved for one day,
Hmm.
and that's the last day of qualifying, and you have not qualified, right? Other than that, that approach is petulant, it's immature, it is disrespectful to your coach, and it is disrespectful to your gifts and your hard work and your talent to continually do that. Okay. And you are also not impressing anybody by doing it. It's not some display of toughness. It's just a display of obstinance and immaturity and delusion.
Hmm.
I can't say that more emphatically. Okay. And I don't think it's cute. I don't think that it's anything that should be admired, because what you're not doing, like you said, is practicing your skill set. You have to know your fitness. You have to trust whoever is advising you, whoever's coaching you, whatever confidants you have, where you've looked at a broad breadth of data over months and weeks prior to the race. You know what your fitness is. Now, I've been wrong, and I've been wrong a few times. Okay. But generally not super wrong.
Hmm.
Stick to your plan. Do justice to everything you did. Why did you, if you're going to do go big or go home, why didn't you just do that in every workout for the 15
Oh,
weeks prior? You ran
yeah.
with restraint. You ran splits. You were measured in your approach and all this. And then suddenly, right, you go and do something completely different on race day, right? Nobody would ever start taking gels that they never had before on race day. You shouldn't wear a pair of shoes you never worn before on race day, right? You
Yeah.
shouldn't go and enter a Thai chili eating contest the night before a race when you've never had Thai chilies the night before a race. So then why would you then go and run a race in a way that you don't train at all? It
Yeah.
makes no sense. And I find it's confounding, and it's frustrating for me to see super talented people engage in something that can't be categorized any other way than just self-sabotage.
I'm
Sorry,
curious.
it's the way I see the world.
Yeah. I mean, to that end, I think maybe for some athletes, I sense that there's this thing of declaring that they're going for it. So I mean, I'm sort of acknowledging social media. I'm saying, I'm a OTQ hopeful versus someone who doesn't say that, even if they're doing the same running. So I'm curious, how it's probably going into their life a little too much, but how do you think about helping your athletes, you know, gain inspiration from social media, gain inspiration from putting their story out there versus not letting it consume them or allowing them to be consumed by what other people are doing?
Be careful calling your shot, and be ready for the internet tough guys and the ridicule. You make some grand announcement about what you're going to do, and then you come up short for no reason other than the fact that you were just delusional, right? Then you have to bear the consequences of that. Now, listen, races don't go well. There's a lot of people that are just super, super ready for a race. And it's just like, oh my goodness, I do not know what happened out there, right?
Mm.
But very rarely is it a go big or go home situation, right? We've seen some of the great marathoners go out and just have just sort of rotten days. I mean, look at, I mean, I'm sure that like Steph and Kira weren't fired up about the way Boston went, but it wasn't like they did a go big or go home. They were running what they've run in the past in marathons and they just had bad days. That happens, right? But don't be in 225 shape and then go out running 216, 217 pace. And then sort of the predictable is probably going to happen. Be deferential to your fitness, be deferential to the data that's come back. Talk to your coach, your advisors, your confidants, right? Or engage in honest self-analysis if you're self-coached, and many of you are out there and y'all do a great job, and just stick to the data. I know that we are in a bizarro era of anti-empiricism and anti-science. I'm not going to get into that any further in this country, but it doesn't need to creep into your workout data and then you either misinterpret it or choose to ignore it in favor of flame out after flame out. Because the problem is each race is an opportunity. And this is what I tell people, especially people who might have some anxiety that comes
Mm-hmm.
with racing and performance anxiety and race anxiety, right? Is let's choose to view races as an opportunity rather than a stressful event that is a potential hurdle in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if I fail? And I encourage people to say, what if I succeed? Because what I always tell people is, well, what if you fail? And sometimes my response is, well, I don't know. What if? Is your dog going to unlove you? Are your parents going to stop thinking that you hung the moon? Is the sun not going to come up in the morning? The answer is, well, none of that. There's nothing catastrophic is going to happen. I mean, locusts aren't about to descend, on the city that you're in, right? You're going to be okay. It's a disappointment, no lie. But let's not go into it with well, what if something bad happens, right? um Negative energy, negative emotional energy, not only is really really horrible for us, but it's also a communicable disease. Okay.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
we don't need to spread that energy, and so go into it positive. View every race as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to do justice, and be deferential to and almost reverent to the work that you've put in and the people who helped you get there. And then put those bumpers up. Put those bumpers up on the bowling alley at the bowling alley, and let's just keep that ball in the lane. And we don't want to fire one gutter ball after another, because one day you're going to have to either hit a strike or you're out. And you would like to have bowled a bunch of good games up to that point,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just a bunch of gutter ball ridden, petulant, immature, brash, social media braggadocious mess that's netted you maybe not the results you should have netted.
Yeah, not building that momentum that we're looking for.
Oh man,
Speaking of,
momentum's huge, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to touch, I want to sort of end with that. You have some athletes. I'm thinking of Hobtu and Lindsey Bradley. Two athletes who are just really quite quick, but also building. And I'm
Yes.
sure they have dreams beyond which they've never spoken publicly that only you and they know about. So I'm
Mm.
curious. I've admired Lindsay's running career from afar, and um, it's easy for the person who is in a 2:45 marathon to think my life's the hardest. I'm 8 minutes away. Like, it's so hard. Woe is me. But I look at a woman like Lindsay who's been building, like, had some setbacks, but also has ton of potential, and seems to be you know wearing that pressure and opportunity well, modeling the type of behavior
Yeah.
and the type of, routine and
Yeah.
momentum that, so how do you think about those athletes, the ones who, unless something goes terribly off track, like, will qualify for the trials in 28, but they still, you as a team, I'm sure, are looking to build that momentum so that
hmm
they come into 28 on an upswing. How are you structuring those years?
they're talent statistical outliers, but nonetheless still have a big portion of the mountain to climb to reach the top. So, making the changes, being very, very intentional about the things that need to be done, both in the training and outside of training, whether it's physical therapy, whether it's strength training, whether it's diet, whether it's recovery, to start dotting I's and crossing T's. Once all the big stuff is taken care of, the little stuff is what's left. I can tell you that, not going into any details, but this week, major positive changes are going to be taking place, and one of those runners, for one of those runners, that is going to, I believe, net some what I hope to be very satisfying results by December. With Hoff 2, obviously, having run 2:09 in March in his second marathon ever, obviously the runway is long and the runway is accessible out in front of us. And, still got to keep that bowling ball in the lane. We still have the bumpers
Hmm.
up, but life looks pretty good right now. And we got to just
Yeah, no,
train well, you know.
it's
Um,
exactly.
but it's really interesting because there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, well, once I get to that level, life's
Yeah,
going to be good and I'm going to be satisfied." Once I get to that level, and the answer is, until you're Olympic champion, you're probably not going to be satisfied. But man, that's okay. That is
yeah.
okay. Keep driving, keep striving, keep thriving. Okay, everybody.
It's gonna be wonderful. Well, we will have you back on in the coming months, both to break down the successes and exploits of different athletes, and also just like as a check in on this journey that we're all about to go on. I think we're so excited for. We feel like when the story of the trials only gets told in the lead up to the event
Mm,
in the winter of 28, it flattens the narrative and it loses out on all these like deeper stories to go deep on. So if you're listening to this and you feel like a runner who you just think their story needs to be told, either someone who qualified, who will probably be reaching out to, or someone who made a chopped off a ton of time and is on a heater, we'd love to hear from those stories and tell those stories. So please reach out to us. Jeff, this is awesome. We will be in touch again, I am sure.
Celebrate the human spirit. What an incredible journey we're all on, no matter what we're passionate about. Lean in, everybody. Lean in. Go be good.